Do you know me?
Well, I think I would have remembered.
Have we ever met?
Well, no.
Never?
Never.
That's what I thought. You see, I'm Mrs. Evelyn Mulray. You know Mr. Mulray's wife? And since you agree with me that we've never met before, you must also agree with me that I've never hired you to do anything, certainly not spy on my husband. I see you like publicity, Mr. Geddes. Well, you're going to get it.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film, we explore its themes, its history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California, where this movie takes place.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Roca. I'm a voiceover artist, writer, producer, and host over at Collider and the Top 10 and Cine-Files. No, that's the one I'm on now. And the Geek Buddies and the Deep Cut, and certainly this one that I enjoy the most. And this is going to be an interesting conversation. We were talking off mic, Steve, because this film that we're about to talk about is a very important film in the history of California, a very important film in the history of film itself, but yet it's not necessarily one of our favorite films that we run to and watch over and over and over again.
For either of us.
Yeah.
That's what's strange, is there was time where, French Connection and Searchers are really your films, but not so much mine.
Right.
There have been other films like,
One recently. Across America, Lost in America.
Oh, Lost in America, totally my film, but
Yes.
not your film. This one, I appreciate the hell out of this film.
Yeah.
I totally understand why it's important. I totally understand why it's well made, but I don't go back to it, just as you said.
Yeah.
And the film we're talking about, of course, is Chinatown. And the reason we're talking about today is we lost the iconic, great, fascinating character that is or was Robert Evans, who passed away just a few weeks ago.
Hello, this is my movie. Yeah.
So in prep for this, I decided to re-listen to The Kid Stays in the Picture, which is his autobiography.
It's a great book.
It is. What was so funny about listening to it was normally I'm going to take lots of notes, and
Sure.
and I really didn't, because it's just filled with his character. And for those of you who don't know about Robert Evans, he is, like, to me, the archetypal Hollywood 60s, 70s producer guy.
Yeah.
Down to the womanizing, self-aggrandizing style, cocaine, passion, anger, controversy, everything you can think about when you picture that guy is Robert Evans.
Yeah.
I've been shot down, bloodied, trampled, accused, threatened, disgraced, betrayed, scandalized, maligned. Tough? You bet your ass it is. But I ain't complaining. Nothing comes easy. Resolve? Fuck 'em. Fuck 'em all.
Must have been an incredible pain to work with,
Oh, yeah.
but certainly an incredible character in the history of Hollywood and someone that is fun to enjoy from the outside.
And honestly, I would have loved to have met him.
Yes.
I
me
mean,
too.
that would have been fascinating. I don't know that I would have wanted to work for him.
No.
Of course, if Robert Evans had called me up and said, "Baby,
Baby.
I want to make a movie with you," I would have said, "Yes, sir."
Yeah. Then 3 months later when he goes, "You're off the picture."
You're off the
baby.
picture.
It's mine now.
So I'm going to give a quick,
Yeah,
and
please.
the thing is, we're actually going to do two bios today, which we don't normally do, because we also have a first-time director, and we got to talk about him as well,
Yeah.
and that's Roman Polanski. But starting with Robert Evans, he's born in 1930 in New York, up towards Harlem, and his dad, which I find interesting, is a dentist, Jewish family, and he's one of the few dentists that worked with African Americans in Harlem, and he had both. He would treat all races, anyone who came to his offices, he would treat. And there was a lot of controversy and a lot of people who would not go to his office because African Americans had sat in his chair.
Jesus.
So that's where Robert Evans starts off. And he really does want to be an actor. And as a kid, he works on radio. He does over 300 radio shows before he's 18. But then nothing. And acting doesn't work out for him. He's just completely not successful, goes in the women's apparel business with his brother. He's off in Los Angeles on a business trip, sitting by the Beverly Hills pool. And this is the story.
This is what he says.
This is what he says. Well, I mean, some of the facts we know are true, which is that, so he says that Norma Shearer, who's a famous Hollywood actress, sees him by the pool and says, "You should play my dead husband, Irving Thalberg, in the upcoming film The Man of a Thousand Faces," which is the Lon Chaney story starring Jimmy Cagney. Just spots him, asks him if he's an actor. "You should play my husband." And he does. That's his first movie role. Is that really how he got the movie? I don't know.
Say.
I don't know, but he did, and he was then his next big role. Daryl Zanuck saw him and said, "Look, he's got to play Pedro Romero in The Sun Also Rises," based on the Hemingway book, and this is the most elegant, most famous, most powerful, and most passionate Spanish matador in Spain, and everyone goes, including Hemingway, including Ava Gardner, including everyone's in the film. This Jewish kid from New York should not play Pedro Romero. And you know what Daryl Zanuck apparently said?
What?
The kid stays in the picture. That is the title of his book. And at that moment, he decided that he wanted to be Daryl Zanuck.
Wow.
He wanted to be the person who had the power to say the kid stays in the picture. And he did a bunch of movies at this time. He's like in the 10 Commandments. He's in all sorts of stuff, but doesn't really succeed as an actor. By the way, this is what he says. And again, this is a Robert Evans story.
Yeah.
He says that out of spite for Ernest Hemingway, who did not want him in The Sun Also Rises, he slept with Margot Hemingway.
Wow.
That's his daughter or granddaughter, I think.
I think granddaughter.
Granddaughter.
Yeah.
So, that's Robert Evans.
Jesus.
And if you listen to this book, there is a lot of
Yeah.
the ladies.
There's a lot of, yes. That's a good way to put it. He's a boatman, what they say nowadays, I think.
He decides he wants to be a producer. And he tries to option some material. He tries to do some plays, but without actually having produced anything.
Yeah.
Charles Bloodhorn, who was the head of Gulf and Western and that owned Paramount, says, "I'm going to hire you to be the head of Paramount Studios." So he goes from an actor to kind of a wannabe producer to being the head of the studio. And Paramount at the time is in deep trouble. It's like number 9, and it's really had one bomb after another.
Yeah.
And the reality is despite his lack of experience, Evans puts together an unbelievable run of hits and completely turns the studio around. Here's a list of what he brought into the studio: Barefoot in the Park, The Odd Couple. The Odd Couple is really the one that's really started to turn the tide. And then he brings in Roman Polanski to make Rosemary's Baby, which is a monster, huge hit. Goes then The Italian Job, True Grit, Love Story, which is a gigantic hit starring his soon-to-be wife, Ally McGraw. Which is, it's a perfectly fine movie.
Yeah.
It's not one I think that we'll ever do on the Cine-Files. Did Harold and Maude, which is that is one we'll do on the Cine-Files.
Okay.
That is a fantastic movie.
That's your film.
Not your film?
No.
Okay. Well, that'll be an interesting one down the line.
Yes.
And then, of course, The Godfather.
Yeah.
And The Godfather 2. Serpico, Save the Tiger, The Conversation, and what we're going to talk about today, Chinatown, which he also produced.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not only is it an unbelievable run of films, but that's the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's why The Kid Stays in the Picture is such a fantastic book for those conversations, those stories, to hear about how those films came to be and what was involved in them, and to kind of like sit back and be overwhelmed by an incredible run of films. And you have to, no matter what you feel about him personally, you cannot argue his taste, and you cannot argue that he understood the public. And maybe because he hadn't been in a studio system for 20 years, he was more on the ground, understanding, knowing people, seeing people, talking with people, having connection with people that helped him figure out what the people wanted to see or what the people were searching for at their movie theater, especially in a time of transition in the 70s.
Well, and unlike all the other studio heads, his connection wasn't to the old Hollywood system.
Right.
It was to the new young people. It was to Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson and Coppola and all of those people. That's who he found interesting. And he was tenacious and argumentative and difficult and passionate and also high on coke.
Yeah.
And, made a lot of... And of course, I think it's 1980, he gets arrested for trafficking in cocaine, which he, pleads down to a misdemeanor and gets off with making a PSA against drug use. Now, I don't really know the details of the case,
right?
But that really sounds like a rich guy.
Yeah,
that's when you got a lot of money and a lot of fame. You could get away with some stuff.
Yeah.
Married 7 Times.
Yes.
Orson Welles says that one of the characters in Other Side of the Wind is making fun of him. And of course, Dustin Hoffman in Wag the Dog, that is him doing his Robert Evans impression. So if you want a sense of who this guy is, that's what Dustin Hoffman thinks.
There's also a fantastic documentary based on The Kid Stays in the
Which
Picture.
I've never seen.
Oh, and Robert narrates most of it.
Yes, I'm sure he does.
Yes, with weird ways of animation, like things are moving in and out of certain. It's a fantastically fun documentary if you're into film. I think Kid Stays in the Picture and Easy Rider Raging Bulls. Yeah. Those are the two 70s for me. 70s books that you can read about that time that are very, very interesting. If you want to get into any kind of stuff about the 70s.
I think for those of you who really want to call yourself a cinephile, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, kind of a must-read.
Yeah.
I have issues with the book. I thought about trying to reread the Chinatown sections of the book again for this, but then one of the problems with Audible is finding just those sections would have been really hard, and so I couldn't quite make that happen.
Right.
Roman Polanski. So this is a complicated one.
This is fun because, well, not fun. I'm sorry, I used the wrong term. This is interesting because this is also a guy who's got a history with women, young women, or whatever. But with the Robert Evans, he's a character. Polanski, this is a way more serious situation.
It's serious in every way.
Yeah.
I mean, like the story is really tragic, really scary, really upsetting. And this is the thing I'm going to say. There are things to absolutely condemn Roman Polanski about, and don't think we should shy away from that at all. There are things to absolutely feel sorry for Roman Polanski because he went through things in his life that are as tragic as you can imagine. And he's a great director.
Yes.
Like, I can't not say that this man is an unbelievable, and how you reconcile what we're going to talk about a little bit that's really up to you. I mean, that's how you figure out how you're going to do it. He's born in 1933 in Paris, actually. He's a French-Polish Jew. His family moved back from Paris to Poland in 36. Nazis invaded in 39, moved his family into the Krakow ghetto. He was, at 6 years old, kicked out of school because Jews were no longer allowed to study in school, forced to wear an armband with a blue star on it. He saw his father taken away in front of him by the Nazis and marched off to a death camp. He ran up to his father, and he's a little kid, crying and screaming, and his father claimed not to know him, yelled at him, and said, "Get lost," to save his life. Right. He saw his mother taken away. She was taken to Auschwitz, where she was killed.
Wow.
He saw women shot in the street in front of him. He was hidden in foster homes. I mean, it's very much, it's Anne Frank. It's what we just saw in Jojo Rabbit. It's that he was one of these little kids that some Catholic Polish citizens managed to protect. They raised him as a Catholic kid. He went through catechism. He learned to say all the prayers and all that stuff, pretending to be a Catholic. But also there's a story where he was out and found by German soldiers, and I can't tell from what I've read if they knew that he was Jewish, but they played a game where they practiced shooting at him with guns. So, where he could have died, and they basically, strapped him down and fired at him, but didn't shoot him. I mean, that's unbelievable trauma. And his father actually survived the war, and they were reunited after Poland was liberated. And then immediately he went into his love of movies, and he just absolutely was obsessed with movies, studied film in school, made some unbelievable short films. I don't know if you've ever seen some of Polanski's shorts. No. They're really, like, if you want to look at, here's a student filmmaker that's got real talent, it's Roman Polanski.
Wow.
Makes Knife in the Water in 1962, which is a great film. Repulsion at 65 with Catherine Deneuve is an amazing film. Cul-de-sac, which I've actually never seen. Fearless Vampire Killers, which is a weird film. And then met Sharon Tate then. And makes Rosemary's Baby in 1968, which is a massive, huge hit. Yeah. And then Sharon Tate and a whole bunch of her friends are killed in his house by the Manson family in 1969.
Right.
And this is, for those of you who just saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, this is the story that you're seeing, except it didn't end that way. It ended with Sharon Tate being murdered. And I mean, just so you think about this half of his life.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable trauma that this person has survived. And I can't imagine the violation of the home that you bought being this site of these grisly murders where your pregnant wife is killed. I mean, just horrible.
Yeah.
Leaves the U.S., doesn't want to be in L.A. anymore, goes to make Macbeth in Europe. Have you seen this Macbeth?
I haven't. His films are films I don't run to see. I have very complicated feelings with him, so I don't know. I mean, I may go on a run one weekend and just watch them all back to back to back. But the Macbeth I hesitate for, because this is the time also where he was experimenting with weird approaches to film, and so I don't know if I want to see his version of Macbeth.
It
like
is.
This.
I saw it a long time ago.
It's very sexual, apparently,
and really dark.
Yeah.
It is the most dark, painful, horrible, vicious version of Macbeth you could imagine.
Which is, by the way,
a dark play.
Yes, regardless of how some people direct it, and especially having the comic relief in there, which is what I appreciated about the Fassbender version a few years ago that removed that comic relief and made it just a dark
heavy
play. I think it's a dark, heavy play that has a lot of things to say, and I like when they don't put the comic relief in there, because I think it's one of Shakespeare's kind of hearkening back to Titus Andronicus kind of period in his life.
Right.
Yep.
So he comes back to LA to make Chinatown. And then in 1977, he is arrested at the Beverly Wilshire for drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So, and there seems to be no question that this is what he did. He was convicted.
Yeah.
And right before sentencing, he fled to Europe, where he's been ever since, despite many attempts to extradite him. And despite the fact that he is a convicted rapist, child rapist, he is continued to make films. Some of them, I still will say, some of them great films.
Yeah.
For the next 40 years, and is still in Europe.
Yeah.
And so what do we do with this? For some people out there, they're going to say, I will never watch any of his films.
Right.
And I totally understand that. For some people, they say it doesn't matter what he did, and we keep the art. That's really a personal preference. But I don't think we can talk about Chinatown without at least discussing, at least putting this stuff out there. We can't whitewash it and say this never happened.
No, and we've never done that. I think we've always addressed the foibles of directors and actors and creators head on as a podcast, and that's always been, I think, one of the positive things about our show. And we don't take sides in that way, in terms of because obviously we're going to talk about this person and review or discuss their film. So that's our approach to it. But we will definitely say if we don't like something, or if something is wrong, or something shouldn't have happened. We're very upfront about that. Chaplin's not an easy person to talk about either.
Well, frankly, there's a lot of people on some. Polanski's is particularly nasty.
Sure.
But so is Bill Cosby's. There's some nasty people whose art I really admire or admired.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time figuring this out.
I think the most difficult one for me is Weinstein, because I think he's an abhorrent human being from top to bottom. Yet you can't deny the incredible films he brought into our world in the 90s during the independent film movement. So many people would not have careers without that guy, and yet he's one of the most disgusting humans on the planet.
Totally agree. Here's why I don't have as much of a problem. Because I don't watch... It doesn't bother me to watch a Tarantino movie or watch Shakespeare in Love or to watch a Will Smith movie and think Kevin Smith movie, totally different thing.
Yes.
To watch a Kevin Smith movie and worry about Weinstein. To me, he's a scumbag, and these movies are very separate.
Right.
I can't listen to a Bill Cosby monologue.
Yeah.
Because that's him.
Yeah.
And I had such belief and such love. I listened to those albums over and over again. I adored him, and he was selling a bill of goods about who he was.
Right.
That is such a fucking lie, and I don't think I could listen to it. I don't think I could do it.
Why do you think we forgive Polanski? Or not forgive, but
I don't forgive him.
Right, but why do you think we can work with Polanski? It's as a society, because even the Oscars gave it to Adrian Brody and nominated The Pianist.
Yeah,
and he won for The Pianist.
Yeah,
I think Polanski won for Best Director for The Pianist, and you're like, how is this possible, considering what he's done? And the woman has come out to speak about it as well as an adult recently, because Tarantino brought it up and stuff.
Well, and she is, as it seems from what I've read from her, and I don't want to even mention her name because she seems to be as angry at the media, and the world that has continued to ruin her life, as she is at Polanski for what he did to her 42 years ago.
Right. What a surprise! Some people use other people for their cause celeb or whatever.
So I literally am sitting here on our podcast saying I don't know how to navigate this. I don't think I remember when we had Kim Masters on the show, and we asked her this question because she's been so involved in the Weinstein and all the stuff that's happened lately.
Yeah.
And what she said is, and she said it very frankly, was, well, we don't take art off the walls. And I was like, you know what? That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. Like
when we talked about Crimes and Misdemeanors, which is one of my favorite podcasts of ours, there's shit in that movie that you have to think about Woody Allen and his behavior, but it's still a great film. It's one of my favorite films. So,
I feel like we could have done more Woody by now.
Yeah.
But we also have hesitations because of all the stuff around him. So, because there are some great films to discuss in the Woody Allen resume, man. So, but they'll come up when they're supposed to come up. But she makes a great point. We don't take art off the wall. So it's very, very true. And it goes all around. Look, Kennedy cheated on Jackie Kennedy all over the place. Martin Luther King did the same thing. You've got people with some kind of unsavory or I don't know, morally questionable decisions and history, yet we still revere them. So it's a very weird line to walk. I guess we're all just humans.
Yeah. Well, you saw the thing that Obama put out recently where he said you can't I can't quote him exactly, but don't expect these people to be perfect. No one's going to be perfect. We all going to have flaws.
Yeah.
Now,
including the people judging other people for not being perfect.
Oh yeah.
That's the horrible truth of it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think the one thing I think is that there's a difference in the way we look at the past at Thomas Jefferson or at Woodrow Wilson or at FDR or Kennedy or people like that or Roman Polanski and what we do when we look in the future.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Want for the future.
Is that we go like, okay, our standards have now changed and we're not going to do it this way anymore.
Yeah.
But we could still like this movie.
Yes. Absolutely.
And speaking of this movie, there is one other reason why we have picked it, and that is it is a pick of 3 patrons on Patreon: Matthew Norris, Jake Blackman, and Matthew Hasso. You've got a few in there. I'll pick Chinatown as one of their Patreon picks. And first of all, thank you so much for your support. Yeah. And if you want to have your film picked to be discussed on the Cine-Files, you can go to patreon.com/the-Cine-Files.
I like that one of them's named Jake. I like that. Seems appropriate for Chinatown.
Does seem appropriate. A little bit of pre-production.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Robert Towne, which is where this whole thing started, the screenwriter, I didn't know he was roommates with Jack Nicholson. They were roommates during all the years of failure, because Jack was around a long time.
Yes.
And not getting traction. He worked as a writer and he did all sorts of stuff. I mean, he wrote the Monkees movie, Head. Yeah. He was in, and it's really at the late 60s and Easy Rider that he starts to get discovered, and Robert Towne is coming along with him at the same time, and it's in that sort of late 60s era where Towne started to come up with the idea for Chinatown. And it came from a couple of places. First of all, it came from he's a native Los Angelino, and he was looking around something going, wow, this city has changed, and started to think about how the city has changed. At the same time, he started learning about the water wars, which is a real piece of Los Angeles history, not just history. It is still part of Los Angeles, what we do with our water. And he also got to be friends with a cop who worked the Chinatown beat. And that he asked him what it was like to work, and he was working Vice in Chinatown. And the cop said, oh, basically, we do as little as possible. And when he asked why, he said, well, Chinatown is so complicated because of all the different dialects, all the different cultures, and there was really strong influence of the Tongs, the Chinese mafia, essentially, that they don't know what to do there, and so they did as little as possible. And these ideas of how LA's changed, the water wars, and Chinatown start bubbling around. And Robert Evans, who we've already talked about, comes to Robert Towne and says, I want you to write, I'm going to pay you $175,000 to write The Great Gatsby. And Towne turns him down.
Yeah.
He says, I don't want to be the guy who screws up an American classic. And he kind of felt the movie is unmakeable. And
I think the 2 versions that have been made prove that point.
Yeah, I don't think it's, what's funny? That of all the great books of American literature, as we said about movies, that's not my book.
It's not my book either. So.
I mean, I've read it. But compared to Steinbeck and Hemingway and Faulkner and all these, Great Gatsby's not for me.
I could give a shit about rich people, man.
I like rich people sometimes.
I mean, the what's it about? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it doesn't do it for me so much.
I can't get this girl the whole time. I can have everything else, but I can't get this girl. Okay.
Towne wrote hundreds of pages. Hundreds. I think there was 300 plus pages. The script that he finally turns in is 186 pages. And Evans wants Polanski. And Jack Nicholson wants Polanski. And Polanski doesn't want to do it. And he doesn't want to come back to LA. He's still, really upset, obviously, by the Manson murders.
Right.
And because this is just 4 years later, 4 years later when this starts happening. Yeah. Finally, they convince him to come back. And he says, well, I'll only do it if I get to really work on the script with Robert Towne. And so they move in together for 6 weeks. Wow. 6 weeks of two guys smoking and I'm sure drinking and doing drugs and yelling at each other solid. Wow. This movie has a ton of arguments behind it. I mean, and Evans believed in arguments, and Polanski believed in arguments, and Jack Nicholson and Towne, they all believed that if there wasn't a lot of contention, you wouldn't get good work. And they fight, and they finally kind of get the script into some kind of shape. It's the middle of a heat wave, by the way, in LA, and they had no air conditioning. And they still couldn't figure out an ending. And they started shooting with no ending. By the way, the original script never even went to Chinatown.
Wow.
Yeah. Would you like to get into the movie?
Yeah, let's do it.
I love the sepia tone Paramount logo and the credits, and that great Jerry Goldsmith score.
Yeah, I wonder if that's one of the first times they've ever done that to kind of put you in the mood for a film.
That's a great question because you kind of do that in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Right. There's sort of some of that like. It's an interesting thing because did we have nostalgia for the old days of movies before the late 60s, early 70s?
That's what I wonder because you would have, remember That's Entertainment? There were 3 separate installments of that. Right. And it was about going back in time to like remember the great musicals. And so I think we started developing nostalgia for it in the 70s as film was changing.
And the movie opens with some still photographs of people having sex outdoors. Yeah. And we cut to Burt Ward, who I love. I think we've already talked about how much we love him in Rocky and other stuff.
You mean Burt Young?
Burt Young, sorry.
Yes,
not
Burt Ward, that's
Burt
Batman.
Ward is Batman. You know what's funny? It says Burt Ward in my notes. So clearly this mental...
Fair enough.
I would not do well in the Schmodown.
But holy shnikes, Batman! I sleep with my wife.
So it's obvious that these are pictures of his wife. He gets upset, goes to the Venetian blinds, which I just love.
He's so dramatic here. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, well, it is a big deal.
All right, Curly, enough's enough. You can't eat the Venetian blinds. I just had them installed on Wednesday.
There's Jack Nicholson looking stylish as Jake Gittes. He offers him a drink. And he's basically trying to get Burt out of the office, because this is what he does. He's a private eye, and the fact is, while we might want to, this is what Robert Towne says. Well, we might want to romanticize all the cool things that private eyes do. All the detectives, 85% of their business is this right here.
Yeah,
taking dirty pictures of people screwing around on their mates.
Yep.
And he gets him out, and just as he gets him out, in walks a woman elegantly dressed with the cigarette and the cigarette holder and a man in a suit there. And this woman says she is Mrs. Mulray. And this is Diane Ladd.
Yeah.
Which I totally forgot that she's in this movie.
A young Diane Ladd.
My husband, I believe, is seeing another woman.
And I love Nicholson's reaction because it's sort of, oh boy, here's another one. And then simultaneously being a good businessman and doing what you were supposed to do.
It's good money.
And he basically at first tries to convince her to let sleeping dogs lie.
Mrs. Mulray, do you love your husband?
Yes, of course.
Then go home and forget everything.
And she's not going to do it. She needs to know. And he goes, okay. And he asks for the guy's first name. And she says, Hollis Mulray. And he immediately goes, Water and Power? The chief engineer of the Department of Water and Power? Now, John, do you know the chief engineer of the Department of Water and Power in Los Angeles?
I don't know anybody. I just send a check.
Apparently, Jake Gittes, he's really on top of all the administrations of L.A.
Which is not unbelievable at that time, I imagine, because, if he's doing this and he's working in L.A., he has to be aware of who the power players are in L.A., so makes sense.
And he agrees to take the gig. And we go off to a meeting of the Department of Water and Power where they're discussing a dam. And this is where we're going to get into the water politics of this movie.
That's what I find surprising about this film, because it can get a bit dense about the water politics in LA at the time.
Well, it's so dense, in fact, and this is something that I would like to try to do.
Yeah.
I don't know, having thought about this movie a lot over the last couple of days, I don't know if I still understand what the hell's going on. And so because there's so many twists and turns, is that I want to, and it's very possible that there is no knowing what
Yeah.
actually is going on. But I want to try to construct it. What's happening at this meeting is there's a discussion about whether or not to build this dam.
Right.
Not entirely sure who the dam is for, but we invite Hollis Mulray up to speak, and Jake responds, and he goes up to talk about how he, the chief engineer of the LADWP, is against building this dam.
In case you've forgotten, gentlemen, over 500 lives were lost when the Vanderlip Dam gave way.
Which is actually a reference to the St. Francis Dam disaster of 1928, where a dam collapsed and 600 people were killed in Los Angeles, including a whole bunch of kids. Right. And here is the thing where I was totally, completely wrong about. So, we've kind of come across things like this before where we've done movies that have something to do with historical stuff and said, like, look, don't take the movies too seriously because they're not accurate. There are things in the movie that have to do with real things, but nothing in this movie is actually, like, my impression was that it was more real than it was.
Right.
And here's the big mistake that I made. In my brain, William Mulholland, which Mulholland Drive, big road in LA, he was a very famous person in the founding of LA.
Yeah.
In my brain, I always went, that's John Huston.
Oh, right.
It's not John Huston.
Right.
It's Mulray.
Yes.
He is Mulholland. Is that, and because I had a negative view of Mulholland as like kind of one of the robber baron founders of LA. That's not who he was at all.
No.
He was an engineer. Seems like a really good guy. He is, William Mulholland came to the U.S. in the late 1800s. He was an Irish immigrant. He taught himself the math, the engineering, everything necessary to be a great engineer. And he is really, in a lot of ways, the guy who created modern Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Because he, in addition to supervising the initial sort of water distribution in LA, and what they say in the scene that we're in a desert is true. Without water, there's no Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And he's also the guy who built the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which went way up to the Owens Valley, up in the Southern Sierras, to bring water all the way down to LA. There were people that compared this aqueduct, which took 10 years to build from 1903 to 1913. There are people that compare it to the Panama Canal.
Wow.
Now, I don't think it's at that level, but this was a huge, huge thing. Very controversial in all sorts of ways.
Yes.
Massive amounts of money were made out of this process. Massive amounts of people really pissed off. There really have been what are called the water wars over decades, from Los Angeles to the Owen Valley to the San Joaquin Valley, and all this stuff this is very serious California politics. But really, it sounds like Mulholland was a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
And he literally went and did an inspection of that dam the day it collapsed. And he said, it's okay. And that's 1928. And that is the end of William Mulholland's career.
Wow.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're referencing when we're in this scene. And so Mulray is against this dam. And the actor, by the way, playing Mulray is Daryl Zwirling. And he just says, this dam is too dangerous. I'm not going to build it. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. And all the farmers there are pissed off. They boo, and in come a bunch of sheep. Yeah. Because we bring sheep to our meeting. Jack really likes what is going on. And this one farmer says,
You steal the water from the valley, ruin the grazing, starve my livestock. Who's paying you to do that, Mr. Mulray? That's what I want to know.
and that actor, I looked at him going like, who is that guy? So familiar.
Yeah.
Rance Howard. It is Ron Howard's dad.
Yep.
I was looking at it, it's like, is that Bruce Dern? No, is that, yeah. It's once I read it, who it was, it's really obvious. And now we cut to the dam site, and there is a great shot of the car driving down on the dirt road in front of the dam, and Jake is watching. He watches Mulray through his binoculars, and he's walking around on the dirt and sees this kid on like a swayback horse ride up, and they kind of talk. He's still in this binoculars POV.
Yeah.
And the kid rides away, and Mulray goes over to his car and pulls out some kind of big ledger book. And what's so interesting about this at this moment is that we're in a detective movie. It's a mystery. Mm-hmm. And the detective is trying to solve the mystery of what this guy is doing. And what that guy is doing is trying to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
So it's a mystery within a mystery right now. And then we're behind Jack's head as he drives away. We're going to spend a lot of time behind his head. Mm-hmm. Behind his head is a visual pattern in this film. And there are two things about it that are interesting. One is that Polanski wanted us to be with the detective discovering things as he discovered them. And so that is why we're always over his shoulder experiencing things as Jake Gittes does. Yeah. The other thing is this film was in Panavision, which is the really widescreen anamorphic format. And the reason, and Evans hated that because all the old movies weren't in that anamorphic format. So he was like, well, I want to be like one of the old movies. And the reason Polanski wanted this is if you're going to be over someone's shoulders, it's better to have a really wide image because you can see a lot more when you're behind Jake than you could in a less wide image.
Yeah.
And we end up out at the beach somewhere, and he's spying on Mulray. And Mulray goes down to the beach looking sort of pensive, and Jake climbs down, and he's at some kind of a pipe, some sort of big water pipe. And the shots are beautiful. By the way, the two cinematographers on this, one was Stanley Cortez, who's the first DP, kind of an old school guy, and didn't get along that well with Polanski. And then Evans was pissed off at him because this guy was slow. And the movie was going really slow and going over budget. So they fire him and bring in John Alonzo, who was a documentary background, and he shot most of the film.
Wow.
The film's beautiful.
Yes, agreed.
It's nighttime, kind of sunset. Jake is sitting there again near this water thing, starts to hear a trickle of water. And then, boom, a whole bunch of water comes out, totally surprising him. And Mulray looks up, but doesn't see Jake.
Right.
It's later. He goes back to the car. Note on the car. Cart says, hey, fight back, L.A., because we're in the middle of a drought. L.A.'s dying of thirst. He opens up a glove compartment, pulls out a watch, and we see there's a whole bunch of watches, pocket watch, in the glove compartment. I love this. It's great detective stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what's he doing here? We see him set the watch, walks over to Mulray's car, puts the set pocket watch underneath the tire, and we go, oh. Cut to 2 watches, one of which is broken, and now we know exactly what time that he moved.
Yeah.
Which he was there all night.
Yep.
So here's the thing about this. One of the themes that we'll see in this movie is the visual motif of duality, where you see 2 objects,
right,
one broken, one not, next to each other. So we have the pristine watch and the broken watch. This is our first of these dualities.
Yesterday he went to 3 reservoirs, a men's room at a Richfield gas station, and the Pig and Whistle. The guy's got water on the brain.
We see that one of Jake's guys that works for him, a photographer, is taking pictures.
Yep. And
there are pictures with Mulray and another man who is John Huston.
Yeah.
And all we know is that they had a fight, and they said something that sounded like Apple Core. He gets a phone call that the guy we're looking for, Hollis Mulray, is with the girl, and they are in Echo Park, which is where we're sitting right now. My house is in Echo Park, and they go to Echo Park Lake, it's just one of those weird things of living in LA. It's like, that's a 1.5 miles from my house. I've been on that lake. I've rowed a paddle boat right around where they were. And Jake is in the rowboat. He's got a camera, and at first he takes pictures of the other guy in the rowboat, and then he slowly moves over the camera to take pictures of Hollis and a girl.
Yep.
He drives up to an apartment building, climbs up on the roof, leans over, takes pictures, and there's Mulray with this girl, and he takes pictures of them. This great reflection shot on the lens of his camera, and then he kind of slips and a tile falls off the roof, and they look up.
Yeah.
Sort of Ben-Hurish. And we cut to a newspaper. It's got the headline of Hollis is having an affair. There's a heart-shaped picture. It's him and the girl. He's done it. He caught him.
Right.
That's it.
Which I think is Polanski's nod to Kane.
I had the same thought.
Right?
Same thought, yeah.
Because it's the same kind of...
Caught in love nest with, quote, singer.
With quote, singer.
Yeah. And Jake is getting a shave.
Yeah.
And there's a guy next to him as they're talking about this case, and he kind of disrespects him. Like, that's how you make your living?
You got a hell of a way to make a living.
Oh? And what do you do to make ends meet?
Mortgage department, First National Bank.
Tell me, did you foreclose on many families this week?
We don't publish a record in the paper, I can tell you that.
Neither do I.
No, you have your press agent do it.
You get to see Angry Jack.
Yeah.
Who is this bimbo, Barney? Is he a regular customer or what? Yeah, listen, pal, I make an honest living. People only come to me when they're in a desperate situation. I help them out. I don't kick families out of their houses like you bums down at the bank do.
Jake, can I tell you about the guy who...
Maybe like to step down out of the barber chair. Maybe we go outside and discuss it. What do you think?
I like the way he does it because it's like, it comes out of nowhere, but it's desperate at times. Like, right? Because he's just like... Like he's like a snake when he bites. He bites.
Well, and he's clearly not in control.
No.
He's
mad.
He's
super pissed.
He is out of control, and the barber's trying to settle him down.
Right.
Going, hey, let me tell you about this joke. I'm going to tell you this joke, and finally sets him back in the chair.
Yeah.
So Town says that he wrote this movie for Jack. He obviously knew him really well.
Yeah.
And this is what he said. He said he wrote it for Jack's cynicism, for his vanity, which I think is really interesting.
That's fair.
Because he's very much a peacock in this movie, in his clothes and all sorts of things. And he wrote it for his thin skin and his flashes of anger. And this is the thin skin and the flashes of anger right there.
Makes sense.
And we see that he is pissed as the barber is telling this joke. It's an off-color joke.
Yes.
It is more off-color today than it was in 1974.
Sure.
And more off-color in 74 than it probably was in 1937 when the movie takes place.
Yeah.
But we cut to Jake, super happy, walking into his office, wanting to tell his buddy. He sends his female secretary out of the room so he could tell his buddies this dirty joke, dirty racist joke. And of course, we have the classic gag as he tells this joke. They say, hey, Jake, no, we got to stop. We got to stop, because it's the classic, someone is behind you, and the person behind him is
Faye Dunaway.
Faye Dunaway, who hears the whole joke. And then it's funny. Last time we saw Faye, we've had 3 movies with Faye Dunaway.
I know how insane that is.
Yeah. Well, at this era,
how many have we
she's
done with
huge.
Meryl Streep? I don't think we've done.
We've never done a Meryl Streep.
That's insane that we've done 3 Faye Dunaways before.
So this goes on. Well, here's the other one. We've never done a John Huston movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So there's a lot of things in here.
Yeah. We just kind of roll with the tide.
It's just what,
what washes up is what we talk about.
I know, it's, what washes up in Chinatown is about a lot of things washing up. And she says,
Do you know me?
Well, I think I would have remembered.
Have we ever met?
Well, no.
Never?
Never.
That's what I thought. You see, I'm Mrs. Evelyn Mulray. You know Mr. Mulray's wife? And since you agree with me that we've never met before, you must also agree with me that I've never hired you to do anything, certainly not spy on my husband.
and he says, no use getting tough with me. And she says, I don't get tough. My lawyer does.
Yeah.
This is a great entrance.
Yep.
Robert Evans wanted Jane Fonda for this part.
Oh, she'd have been great.
It's a totally different thing.
It is because I think Jane might have changed it, especially that ending. I wonder if Jane might have changed the ending to be a more proactive ending by that character.
I don't know if I've ever seen Jane Fonda have this weird kind of vulnerability that Faye Dunaway has in this movie.
Yeah, and
I don't know that she might have it in her, but I've never seen that.
Also, and to be fair to Jane, it's not that Jane can't play vulnerability. She certainly has.
Oh, sure.
In numerous films, but especially Clute. But, But all her films kind of almost always end with her on top.
Yeah.
So that would have been I wonder if that would have been a change if they got
This
Jane.
does not end with Evelyn Mulray on top.
Nope.
No. By the way, I know we say it in every episode. We don't say it in every episode. Those of you who listen know it. Not only are we going to spoil this, but I'm trying to construct. I really want to try to construct what the hell is happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what we've had so far. Mm-hmm. We have had a woman pretending to be Mrs. Mulray go to hire Jake Gittes, who we later find out is an actress.
Yes.
And maybe a working girl in other ways too. Mm-hmm. And then Gittes takes pictures of Mr. Mulray with a young woman.
Yeah.
Those pictures end up in the newspaper. It seems fairly clear that Gittes did not put them in the newspaper.
Right.
Somebody else put them in the newspaper. Then Mrs. Mulray comes to his office and threatens him with a lawsuit. Right. Okay. What the fuck has happened? Because
who hired the actress?
Who hired the actress?
Who wants to turn the screw on who? Because the young woman, we find out later on, because there was nothing. I don't think we see anything sexual with them, right? In the pictures.
This is the other thing.
Yeah.
What is Hollis doing with this young woman?
Exactly.
Because here, and now we're going to
find out later.
So here's the thing. We sometimes we have to give this extra special warning.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to spoil it, but I'm going to spoil it right now.
Okay.
And this twist is one of the most shocking twists in film. This haunted me so much, this scene, and I'm going to tell you what happens in a scene much later in the movie because I feel like we need to do it now to try to construct what the hell is happening.
Sure.
Which is that the woman that Hollis is with is in fact both Faye Dunaway's sister and her daughter.
Yeah. Because
she has been raped repeatedly by her, although she claims it wasn't rape, by her father, John Huston, who plays Noah Cross.
Yeah.
So she's the product of an incestuous relationship who is for some reason with the man that she is married to, who then John Hillerman, who we're going to meet in a little while, who's the deputy guy in charge of the Department of Water and Power, works under Mulray, that there's the implication that he hired the girl to hire Geddes to get the pictures, and that probably he's the guy that put it in the newspaper because he wants to destroy Hollis, both so he can take his job, which he wants, but also so we can have this dam happen.
Yeah.
And Geddes goes to Hillerman. We'll get to it all later. I want the guy who got you to do it, who we assume is Noah Cross.
Right.
Evelyn's dad.
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds clear to me.
But here's the thing. Why is Hollis hanging out with this girl?
Right.
And why is Evelyn going back and talking about suing Geddes at this moment? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if I
Because she's
understand.
not in on it initially. She doesn't know what's happening. So she wants to threaten Jake a little bit, but she suspects something is happening. She's just not sure what.
But why would she? So what her main motivation seems to be, although this again is not entirely clear,
right,
is protect her daughter's sister,
right,
and settle everything down,
right.
Why have a big lawsuit where this stuff is going to get investigated?
Well, I think you threaten the lawsuit so that you quash all of it coming out. So you just have to threaten.
Okay,
that's a first tactic.
Right.
She's just using this is a first run at the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Geddes is now going, what the hell's going on?
Right.
So he heads off to Mulray's office, says he has an appointment, which of course he doesn't. The secretary says, well, you can wait. He's out to lunch. He goes, oh, well, I'll go wait in his office. Goes in his office. Beautiful kind of search of his office. Does see Evelyn's picture on horseback.
Yeah.
So he confirms that, yes, that is in fact the wife. Right. And kind of looks through the desk drawers, and he finds, a leather case, a whole bunch of other stuff. And then he finds that same big ledger, what we think it was, that Mulray was looking at in the dry riverbed.
Yeah.
And opens it up, and it says, Tuesday night, Hope Pass 7 channels used. But we don't know what this means.
Yes. And
then in comes the deputy chief, this guy we talked about before, John Hillerman, later on Magnum PI, and a million other things.
Macadamia nuts. That's what I remember too.
It's so funny. He's great. And he's great. It's so interesting, like these actors who are actually great actors, who are never leading men people, and they're gonna just play. Like, you have the feeling if you gave him an awesome part, he'd kill it.
Yes.
And he's great in this, of course.
Oh, Hillerman's great.
He's great.
He reminds me a lot of who's the guy that's in 1776 is John Adams, and
It's the guy. He was in L.A. Law too, and he's yeah, I know exactly the guy you mean.
Yeah. I forget. Oh well.
I think I've only seen 1776 once.
What?
I know, it's one of your favorites.
It is.
Well, maybe next show, 2020, we'll do it.
I'll do it on July 4th.
Okay.
That
All right,
seems correct.
Put it in the calendar.
That seems
1776 for the 4th of July. All right.
William Daniels. That's the name of the actor.
William Daniels. Yes, that's the guy. Very Hillerman-ish.
Yeah.
Hillerman-esque.
After you've worked with a man for a certain length of time, you come to know his habits, his values, you come to know him. And either he's the kind who chases after women or he isn't.
Mulray is.
He never even kids about it.
Jake's still trying to find out, like, do you know where he's having lunch? No. And says, well, I'll tell him I'll be back. And he says, can I take one of your cards? And he takes a whole stack of his cards. And he's heading out. And then there we run into a big, brooding, thuggy-looking guy that Jake obviously recognized. His name is Claude Mulvihill, I think. It's just a weird name. And the joke is great.
What are you doing here?
Shut my water off. What's it to you?
How'd you find out about it? You don't drink it. You don't take a bath in it. They wrote you a letter. But then you'd have to be able to read.
Obviously, they have a history.
Yeah.
And it ends up this guy is being hired to protect the reservoirs because with all of this drought and controversy over the dam and water rights, there have been threats on the reservoirs.
Yeah.
They've had to ration the water in the valley, and farmers are desperate. But the city needs drinking water. So the conflict. This is California Politics 101. The conflict between the rights of farmers to water and the cities to have drinking water and expansion of huge cities like LA that need a lot of water. Mm-hmm. That is, if you drive up I-5 right now, you will see crops grow where water flows.
Right.
There is huge pressure on where do we put the limited water a state has, particularly a state that has lots of droughts like California does. Yeah. And there really were water wars. And the Owens Valley, where we got all this water, and Mulholland built the aqueduct from, they blew up the aqueduct multiple times to protect their water rights.
Right.
Because the people that lived there didn't want all their water being sucked out of the groundwater and sent down to LA.
Yeah, this is something, I guess this is a moment to bring this up, but Lindley, my girlfriend, this is her favorite movie. She does not watch a lot of movies, nor does she like a lot of movies, but she loves this movie. And this is the movie that we kind of fell in love at officially when we went to see it over a year ago. But one of the reasons why she loves it so much is also because where she grew up with the tribe, the Mono tribe, and up there in Madeira, the water rights thing is massive.
Oh, it's huge.
It's very, very well known. And there were a couple of people in her tribe, higher up in her tribe, leaders, who knew all about this and were very aware of it and kept the tribe in the know about everything that was happening. So water rights were massive to her and her growing up. And so it's so funny that this is the film that kind of opens it up and highlights it. And I think it's difficult to understand for me personally, I think, because I didn't grow up here.
Right.
And I think if I grew up here, I'd be more like, you do any Washington politics, insidery thing, I'm all about it. I know all the ins and outs of that stuff. But the water rights stuff, I don't really know that much about. But for her, it's like, it resonates with her deeply, and it's why it's one of her favorite films.
Well, and I would say, frankly, if you grew up in L.A., you could be fifth generation L.A. and know nothing about this. You know what I mean? Because you turn on your tap and the water comes out.
Right.
But if you grew up in Madeira, where she came from, this is the economy, this is the livelihood, this is the culture.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of native peoples, both in Owens Valley and all over the state of California, who've had their lives just messed up in all sorts of ways by the power of big cities coming along and taking away their resources. Yeah. Most important, water. So this is, but the hard thing though is that there are some movies where you can learn some history from the movie.
Sure.
This really isn't one of them. It's sort of like, it's not like the Braveheart thing, because this isn't pretending to be a true story. Right. Whereas that one is, but it is still sort of like, wait, the dams and going where, and the years are all wrong, and it's a very different thing. But the fact that there are literal wars about water in California, that is certainly true.
Yes. She sent me like 6 articles about this stuff.
Did you read them?
No, because I don't want to know. I have no interest in knowing about the water rights stuff. So I will fully admit that I didn't read them and I was a bad boyfriend. So, all right. Anyway, there we go.
All right, Lindley.
Yeah.
You do what you have to do.
That's right. I'll take my punishment in the water.
The shots are beautiful. And driving up this hill to this mansion in his convertible is it's gorgeous. Walks up to the front door, rings the bell, and there is James Hong.
Yeah. James Hong pops up in so many weird places, man.
He's so great, and he closes the door on him, and there's just this weird moment where he hears a strange noise, and there's a dude waxing a car, and I don't know why it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know why it's in the movie, except that it's cool on some weird level. And James Hong comes back, lets him inside, tells him to wait. He looks out into the gardener, sees a gardener working, goes out to see the gardener, and the gardener is doing something with the fish pond, and then he pulls some gunk out of the fish pond, and he says,
"Bad for glass." Yeah, sure.
This is the somewhat racial joke of his accent. He says, "Bad for glass."
Yeah.
And Jake says, "Oh, bad for glass," which is, they're saying bad for grass.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he sees something shiny in the pond. And he starts to kind of give it a little metal thing to maybe get it out of the pond. And that's when Faye Dunaway shows up.
Right.
So this is a really important plant. It is something that's going to come back later in the movie.
Yep.
And what is important about why this is bad for the grass, and what actually is this sparkly thing in the pond is something we're going to come back to. Mm-hmm. And Jake says to Faye, "I came to see your husband."
My husband's at the office.
Actually, he's not, Mrs. Mulray. And he's checked out of his apartment at the El Macondo.
That's not his apartment.
Did he rent an apartment in this building?
Yes.
Was he renting the apartment with that girl?
I don't know if he's renting the apartment with the girl. I think he was renting the apartment to be closer to the job.
Oh, okay.
Times when he works late like that.
All right.
Yeah, that happened. That's very sure. That happened a lot. Yeah,
sure.
Back then.
Because who is Mulray, and is he a really good guy?
Right.
Or is he not such a good guy? Is something that I don't think we're going to get. My impression is the movie wants us to believe that he is actually a really good guy.
Yeah.
But what's going on with Catherine, who's the sister daughter? I don't know.
Yeah.
Some weird stuff.
The point is I'm not in business to be loved, but I am in business. And believe me, Mrs. Mulray, whoever set your husband up set me up. L.A. is a small town. People talk. I'm just trying to make a living. I don't want to become a local joke.
Mr. Giddens, you've talked me into it. I'll drop the lawsuit.
What?
I said I'll drop the lawsuit. So let's just drop the whole thing.
Why does she want to drop the lawsuit now?
I think because he's he's dogged. He's determined. He might expose something that she's not ready to kind of expose yet. And so she's just like, fine, I'll just get you out. We're done with it. Just go away.
She started the lawsuit. That might have been this morning.
Right.
Or maybe it was yesterday.
I don't think she ever started the lawsuit.
But she threatened the lawsuit. This is why I go like, why did she, the guy had papers.
Right.
And then she immediately drops it for no particular reason except, so what, again, I'm spoiling the whole movie, but this is how, like, because this is the only way I'm trying to get my head around this thing. So last night, Hollis Mulray was murdered in the pond and those are in fact his glasses are the shiny thing in the pond.
Yeah.
Does she know her husband's dead?
That's a good question. I'll answer it later.
Well played, sir. And I think, so let's put that out there.
Yeah.
She either knows that or she doesn't know.
Right.
If she knows, that's a reason why she might drop the lawsuit. If she doesn't know, then I don't know why she's not dropping the law. And what she does or doesn't know. And it's another thing we'll have to get into as we go along. When was the last time she saw her father?
Yeah.
That's a thing that's going to be very complicated. All right. So he says, I don't want to drop it. And I better check with your husband because he doesn't want to talk to the woman. He wants to talk to the man.
Of course.
Why? What on earth for? Holly seems to think you're an innocent man.
Well, I've been accused of a lot of things before, Mrs. Mulray, but never that.
And now we see the reason why Jake's here.
Look, somebody's gone to a lot of trouble here, and lawsuit or no lawsuit, I intend to find out. I'm not supposed to be the one who's caught with his pants down. So unless it's a problem, I'd like to talk to your husband.
What should be a problem?
May I speak frankly, Mrs. Mulray?
If you can, Mr. Gittes.
Well, that little girlfriend, she was pretty in a cheap sort of a way, of course. She's disappeared. Maybe they disappeared together.
Yeah.
That's her daughter.
Yeah.
Who's 16, by the way. Pretty in a cheap sort of way. And so he wants to find her. She might have information.
Right.
And he says, look, this is nothing personal. And her response very intensely is,
it's very personal. It couldn't be more personal.
Let's look at it this way. Now, this phony broad, excuse the language, she tells me she's you, she hires me. Now, whoever put her up to it doesn't have anything against me. They're out to get your husband. If I can see him, I can help him.
So he's seen, like, okay, this person came and set Hollis up.
Yeah.
And I want to figure out the reason. What's behind all this? Asked if she talked to her husband this morning. She says, no, I went riding, which might be true.
Yeah.
Or it might be she already knew that he was dead.
Right. So she's putting on appearances.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's this weird moment where she says, bareback. I don't know any reason why it's important to say bareback at this moment.
Well, I think it's a noir, right?
Yeah.
It's a modern for that time noir, and so you got to throw a little bit of the sexual innuendo or flirting in there,
because the Black Widow character in the noir is that's the classic figure.
Exactly.
So she tells him, "Oh, my husband usually takes walks at the reservoir," and so he goes, "Okay." So he heads off. We show up at the reservoir again. We're behind his head as he drives up to the location. He gets out. And they say, "Oh, you can't come in here." And he says, "No, I work for the Department of Water and Power." Hands him the card.
Right.
Drives through the gate, is walking down, and then the detectives recognize him. And there is Lou Escobar, lieutenant, who is Perry Lopez, who apparently worked with Jake in Chinatown.
Yeah.
And they know each other. And we don't know what the history is here.
Right.
Other than Jake kind of putting himself where he doesn't belong sometimes.
Yep.
The other cop there is clearly not a fan. And I love, by the way, that Escobar is very elegant.
Yeah.
He's stylish. Yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, I don't know where this character, but it's great to see a Latino character in 1970s, early 1970s. Pablo
Playing a
like
character
this.
in the 30s.
Yeah. Playing a character in the 30s. Yeah. And also a character of some import.
Here's the
status.
Here's the thing that people might not be, it sounds stupid, but that people don't think about. There are Latinos that have been in California and Los Angeles a hell of a lot longer than everybody else.
Yes.
Generation after generation after generation. Both people who actually had settled the city of Los Angeles, which is not an English name,
right?
In the 1800s, and people that immigrated here in the 20s, in the 30s, in the 40s, in the 50s, and have well-established lives and communities and status in this community for a long, long time. And Escobar is certainly one of them. And we're in a really cool handheld shot, by the way. And the reason it's handheld is that if you're on a dolly, this is just technically, dollies are very smooth, but they can only do certain things. So they can go in a straight line, They can curve. They can't make a left turn. They can't go upstairs. They can't go over different levels. And so this shot is going to handheld back, and then step up onto this ramp over the canal or whatever it is that goes down. And it's a really, really nice shot. As we walk down this thing and we're talking about
Hollis Mulray, you seen him?
Yeah,
I'd like to talk to him.
should like to talk to him. You're welcome to try. There he is.
Then we cut to, with a big music sting, a dead Hollis Mulray being hauled up through the water.
Yep.
It's a great, great moment. We have gone to the morgue.
Yes.
Welcome to the morgue.
Mrs. Mulray, do you happen to know the name of the young lady in question?
No,
Or where she might be?
certainly not.
You and your husband never discussed her.
And this is where it gets weird. She says,
We did. He wouldn't tell me her name. We quarreled over her, of course. It came as a complete surprise to me.
really, it was a surprise. So why did you hire a detective to investigate her if it came as a complete surprise? And she goes, what detective? And there, it's like, well, he's right there.
Yeah.
He's standing right there. And she goes, oh, yeah, I hired him because I knew it wasn't true to put an end to the rumors. Okay.
Good thinking on the fly.
Yeah.
Will you need me for anything else, Lieutenant?
Oh, no, Mrs. Mulray, I don't think so. If we need any more information, we'll be in touch.
And Jake says, let me take her outside. They go outside. Reporters there.
Yeah.
He kind of protects her, but he has no problem getting a picture taken by the reporters. He even spells his name out.
Right.
Again, there's that vanity.
It's good publicity, too.
Absolutely.
That money.
And we're at her car, and she says, well, I'll send you a check. He's like, what for? He's like, well, it has to be official that I've hired you, so I'm going to send you a check. And she heads off. He goes back into the morgue and starts talking to the coroner, who's a great, you got to have the great coroner character.
Course.
That's a classic trope.
Middle of a drought and the water commissioner drowns. Only in L.A.
We walk by a naked corpse and we see another dead body. And this is a local drunk who had built like a whole house inside one of these storm drains.
Yeah.
He drowned too. Well, how could he drown? There's no water. He's like, well, he did. He drowned in this riverbed underneath this bridge. It's like, yeah, but there's no water there. It's like, well, he had water in his lungs. And so what does Jake do? Heads off to the bridge.
Yep.
There is some water there. He looks around. Again, the score is killing it.
Yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith's score. And I can totally hear a little bit of the Planet of the Apes in this one.
Yes.
I'll tell you, you know what I think is, I don't think this is my favorite Jerry Goldsmith score. I think this might be my second or third. My favorite is a movie that we are definitely doing next year. It's Patton.
Oh, yeah.
Patton has an unbelievable score.
Yeah, yeah. If we can get Rachel back for that one, that's one of our favorite films.
Oh.
Rachel Cushing.
We've been
I know. We've been trying.
Yeah. Sometimes scheduling's hard.
Rachel's super busy, apparently.
Well, and so are we.
And so are we.
It's not her fault.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. And guess what? Who else is there? Kid on a swayback horse.
Yep.
And he asks him some questions and says, hey, you talked to that guy, who wore glasses? Yeah.
What did you talk about? Do you mind my asking?
The water,
What about the water?
when it comes.
When it comes? What did you tell him?
It comes in different parts of the river. Every night a different part.
And the kid rides away.
Yep.
So we had Jake at the beach when the water came out. And now we have this kid saying, no, this is happening kind of all over the river. He's driving later at night. Again, the shot is behind him. He gets out of the car. We're back at that same reservoir. There's no trespassing sign. Climbs over into the area, looks around, climbs the fence, and he's down sort of in the trough where the water is. And then he hears what sounds like a gunshot. But I think what it is like the sluice opening or something, because all of a sudden water just comes slamming down, catches him, shoots him down the hill into a chain link fence, which he manages to climb up and out.
Yeah.
And that is really Jack.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, really?
That's Jack.
Wow.
And it looks genuinely scary.
Oh, yeah.
And I bet it hit him a lot harder than he expected, because that's a lot of water. And climbing up a fence in a 1930s era suit with 1930s era shoes when you're soaking wet, getting pummeled by a lot of water, that's hard.
Yep.
You know what Jack said?
What?
One take. I will do it once.
Of course.
And he lost his goddamn Florsheim shoe. I remember Florsheim shoes.
Oh, yeah.
And up walks a thug in a white suit who calls him Kitty Cat.
You're a very nosy fellow, Kitty Cat, huh?
And that is Roman Polanski.
Yes, it is. He's flanked by two
bigger guys. Look, again, there's a lot of things to say about Roman Polanski.
Yeah.
He is great in this scene.
Yep.
It is weird and creepy and peculiar, and his rhythms are odd, and his accent is great. By the way, he didn't want to play this part, and everyone else said, no, you have to play it.
Yeah.
And one of the big reasons he didn't want to play the part, he didn't want to cut his beautiful long 70s hair. He literally got his hair cut right before shooting the scene because he really didn't want to do it. And he was also really, really nervous about doing it.
Yeah.
And he came to Jack and said, I don't know that I can do this. I can't act like this in front of the big Hollywood movie. And Jack says, I'll tell you what, I can't do a Jack impression, but he says, I'll tell you what to do. You're nervous. You need to do the thing that is even scarier. So he said, when you go out onto the set, take your pants off in the dressing room and go out with no pants and pretend you were so nervous you forgot your pants. And then it'll be so embarrassing, that situation, that you won't be nervous to do the scene anymore. And that is what Polanski did. He went out with no pants.
I hope he had underwear on.
It was not in the story.
It's the 70s.
Who knows?
It could be 50-50.
Well, but it just got weird with Roman Polanski.
It did.
You know what happens to nosy fellows? Huh? No? Wanna guess?
And he takes that knife, he sticks it up into the left nostril.
Yeah.
Apparently, Nicholson is very proud of his teardrop-shaped nostrils. This is something Robert Towne said. That's how this torture got figured out. Sticks that knife in the nostril, and Polanski says they lose their noses.
They lose their noses.
And he goes, flick, and cuts through the side of Nicholson's nostril, and blood shoots out, and it is brutal.
It is brutal.
It's a brutal film moment.
This and the Marathon Man moment are and the ankling.
Oh yeah,
those are
Misery.
Yeah, and Misery. Those are the three most memorable to me moments like that.
And it's a real simple trick. It's a knife that is on a flange, so it can kind of move just a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's a little button for him to squirt blood in the knife, built into the knife. And he goes flick and squirts the blood, and that's all it is. It's all practical effect. The only thing is that the knife only would bend one way. So if he had the knife backwards, it could really cut Nicholson's ear.
Yeah.
So before every take, Nicholson went, check the knife. Is it in the right way? Okay.
Check the knife.
And he goes down, and they tell him,
Next time you lose the whole thing. Cut it off and feed it to my goldfish.
Now, Robert Towne was obviously working some things out against Jack in this movie. Right? Because, I mean, to go after him in certain ways, and then to mess with his vanity by having him walk around the next few minutes.
long time.
Oh, yeah, for a long time in the rest of the part of the movie with a bandage on his nose to kind of take away a little bit of his vanity, I thought was brilliant.
It's so funny. I have such mixed feelings about Robert Towne.
Yeah?
Because he is discussed as just the great screenwriter of all time. Yeah. And this screenplay in particular is held up as one of the great screenplays of all time. And it's a great screenplay, and he's a great screenwriter. But I don't know if I like him that much. He seems very arrogant. He's a certain type.
Oh, you mean as a person?
Well, and also it's okay, what are all his great screenplays other than Chinatown?
Good question.
And I'm sure you could go look it up.
Let's see.
He seems like a person who's almost like his mystique is greater than the sum of his works.
I also think his name helps. It's such a good name.
It is a good name.
Right, Robert Towne.
Yeah.
And there was a documentary about him as well, I believe.
Oh, I'd be interested.
Yes. Let's take a look at the things he's written.
Tequila Sunrise.
Sure, Tequila Sunrise. He wrote on the Lloyd Bridges show. That's how long ago he's been writing. Wrote 2 episodes of Outer Limits. He wrote. He uncredited writer for Bonnie and Clyde.
Okay. That's certainly a big deal.
Bunch of movies that I don't even know. Then The Last Detail, which is Nicholson's kind of breakout.
I saw it a long time ago. I have no memory of it.
That's him and Randy Quaid. That's how long ago Randy Quaid is. Uncredited screenwriter for Parallax View, the Warren Beatty one that I mistakenly watched for an hour. Thank you, Steve Jones, you son of a bitch. He wrote Shampoo.
Right.
He uncredited writer for The Missouri Breaks, which is Nicholson's thing with Brando. Uncredited writer for Orca. Ooh, uncredited writer for Heaven Can Wait, which is one of my kind of closet favorites from the late 70s.
I love that. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I watched it over and over again in the 80s. On
right,
TV
in the 80s, yeah. Warren Beatty was so good. Then wrote Personal Best, the Mariel Hemingway movie.
Oh.
Right? Isn't it Mariel or is it Margot? Yeah, Mariel, where she plays a track athlete who is a lesbian.
Right.
Then The Terrible Deal of the Century with Chevy Chase and Gregory Hines.
He wrote that?
Uncredited.
This is what I've heard. Is he kind of a script doctor?
Yeah.
That came around a lot?
Then he changes his name for Greystoke, Legend of Tarzan, to P.H. Vazak, whatever that means. Then probably because he didn't want to be known as someone who wrote that. Then uncredited screenwriter for 8 Million Ways to Die. Uncredited for Tough Guys Don't Dance. Uncredited for Frantic, which is also another Polanski
Harrison
film.
Ford, yeah.
With Harrison Ford. Tequila Sunrise. Days of Thunder. The Firm. Love Affair, which is the one with Beatty and Benning. Mission Impossible, the first one with Tom Cruise.
First one, interesting.
Yes. Without Limits, which is the Prefontaine movie.
Oh, yeah.
Then wrote the terrible Mission Impossible 2. Ask the Dust, which I think is a Colin Farrell movie. And then wrote the screenplay for a thing called Welcome to the Basement, 2 episodes of that. So that's it. That's his writing resume.
So I kind of stand by my point.
Yeah, I think you can make a case.
It's like
he's still alive and still writing.
Yeah.
He's apparently doing an adaptation of 39 Steps.
Really? Oof. I mean,
don't touch that.
I'm not saying the guy's a bad writer.
No.
Not at all. But
No,
it's
he's
like,
not.
okay, other than Chinatown, which was the great film?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, he also directed Tequila Sunrise.
He did.
Well, the uncredited Bonnie and Clyde thing, you can give him credit
Absolutely.
for that. If he-
For whatever, but we don't know what he wrote.
Right.
You know, there could have been 6 writers. And in fact, I know because I know the script is by the 2 guys who were the magazine writers.
Yes.
Whose name I don't remember.
Yeah. Of that
Anyway,
article, yeah.
We've digressed.
Yes, we have, but in the right direction.
Yeah, because after this brutal scene where he gets his nose cut open, we cut to a shot again behind Jack's head. And actually, this is a visual joke. He's back in his office. He's talking to his guys. And then there is the cut to him with that big bandage on his nose.
So great.
That's great. And you're right. Having the movie star have his face obscured by a bandage for probably half the film, that's a bold choice.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. And credit to Jack for being cool with it.
Only in the 70s would you get away with that. I don't think any other decade you can get away with that.
Yeah.
Think you can nail Mulvihill? They'll claim you were trespassing.
Don't want Mulvihill. I want the big boys that are making the payoffs.
And while this conversation is going on, someone is calling in a woman who wants to talk to Jake, who says he knows her, name's Ida Sessions.
Don't know her. Take a number.
She insists. He gets on the phone with her.
I was the one who pretended to be Mrs. Mulray. Remember?
Shut the fuck up.
He suddenly is paying a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And
Ida Sessions.
He asks, who's your employer? She won't tell him. He asks, can we meet? No. And she says, just look at the obituary column. You'll find one of those people. And she hangs up. And he looks at the obituary column, but we don't really see much. And and what we find out later is he doesn't understand what's on the obituary column for a while. He's at a restaurant, and Faye enters. So here's a little behind-the-scenes story. There was a lot of upsets on this film.
Oh, yeah.
Here's one of them. So Faye is doing this scene, and Polanski is very particular. He's particular about things visually. It obviously shows this is a beautifully made movie. And there was like a hair that was out of place on Faye Dunaway. And so he says to the hairdresser, like, can you fix this hair? They go back to the trailer. They come back out a half hour later. She turns her head. The hair drops back in front of her face. He says to the hairdresser, can you please fix this hair? We can't shoot this unless you fix it. They go back to the trailer. Again, this is a half hour, long time.
Right.
And time wasted on a movie set, that's money. So she comes back out. The hair drops out of place again. Polanski walks up to her, pulls out the hair out of her head. Faye Dunaway loses it.
Of course.
Screaming, yelling, upset. Literally, they wrapped photography for the day.
Yeah.
They shot nothing.
He's lucky she didn't pound him into dust. Faye at this time is peak Faye.
It's peak Faye.
Yeah, you don't fuck with peak Faye.
Particularly her hair.
Yes.
But they get past that and they do shoot the scene. They sit down in the booth and he says, he got his check in the mail. It's very generous. And he says, it's not enough. And she's like, well, how much do you want? And he's like, I don't want the money is fine.
Yeah.
But I think you shortchanged me on the story.
Yeah.
Something else besides the death of your husband was bothering you. You were upset, but not that upset.
Mr. Giddies, don't tell me how I feel.
Look, you sue me, your husband dies, you drop the lawsuit like a hot potato, all of it quicker than the wind from a duck's ass. Excuse me. Then you ask me to lie to the police.
It wasn't much of a lie.
If your husband was killed, it was. This could look like you paid me off to withhold evidence.
And she says, well, but he wasn't killed, which she might know that he was.
Right. If she can lie to the cops, why wouldn't she lie to him?
Exactly. Well, and she is. I mean, she's.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly know of many of the lies.
Yes.
We just don't know all the lies because the reality, we're never going to get the bottom of this story.
Right.
And she says, oh, actually, I did lie about one thing, which is that she knew about the affair.
And you weren't the least bit upset.
I was grateful.
That's a great line. Okay, I just dissed Robert Towne a little bit, but this is a great script. I'm not saying it's not. It's a fantastic script, and that is a great moment.
Look, I do matrimonial work. It's my métier. When a wife tells me that she's happy that her husband is cheating on her, it runs contrary to my experience.
Unless what?
She was cheating on him.
Which is, of course, the truth.
Yeah.
She says, I dislike the word cheat. He asks if you had affairs, and then asks if Mulray knew about it.
Well, I wouldn't run home and tell him every time I went to bed with someone, if that's what you mean.
And then he asks, and this is the crux of the whole thing.
Where were you when your husband died?
I can't tell you.
You mean you don't know where you were?
I mean, I can't tell you.
You were seeing someone, too. For very long?
I don't see anyone for very long, Mr. Geddes.
Okay, let's contemplate this for a moment.
Sure.
Husband died a couple of nights ago.
Yes.
We know that he was killed at her house.
Mm-hmm.
We know that he was drowned in the saltwater pond.
Well, we know in retrospect.
Right, at the end of the
We don't know right now.
No.
Right.
I'm saying what I'm trying to reconstruct.
Yeah.
As much as a detective, I'm trying to reconstruct what actually happened. We also know that the person that killed her husband is her father, Noah Cross, because that's his glasses that are actually in the water.
Right.
She says that she was with someone. Is the someone that she was with her father?
I think so.
So therefore, she was there when he was killed, and she does know that he was killed.
Unless he went and did it after they had whatever, hung out or whatever. Because he could have gotten to in the meeting with her or met up with her just to kind of assure her that he was going to protect her and protect the dad.
Before or after he killed Hollis?
I don't know. Maybe before.
See, to me, if she went and if dad came over, and she had sex with her father, I mean, this is all fucked up stuff. And Hollis came home after his regular nightly outings to the various reservoirs, and walked in on them or found dad there.
That's certainly possible.
That's certainly a motivation for violence in Hollis's death.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Sure.
The other question, she says, I don't sleep with anyone for very long. So is she a person, she's also could be that she's telling the truth there, and that in fact she's had various other lovers, but can't really connect with them on an intimate level because of the abuse she suffered at the hands of her father.
Right.
So it could have been that she's just with some random person.
Yeah.
And
the Hollis thing seems like an arranged marriage by Noah to keep tabs on Hollis.
Well, again, but it's after they had a falling out. So why would she? Again, I'm going into the future.
Yeah. The power of that relationship though is like overwhelming. You know, she always goes back to him. We find out, later on in the film, how this relationship is something that she's never been able to fully sever. Nor has she taken the strongest. Like when she starts to take the strongest steps towards it, she enlists Jake's help. But in enlisting Jake's help, at the critical moment, she can't quite 100% go forward with it, and that's what ends up causing what happens.
And to some degree, she's used Hollis.
She could have gone to the papers at any moment with this story, any moment
with the story about Hollis,
her and her dad.
Her and her dad. Oh,
right.
yeah. Well,
at any moment.
There are big reasons why a human might not want that story out there.
Sure, but but if she wanted her dad to pay, if she wanted to really sever the relationship, if she could, and it's not. I'm not saying. How can I say this correctly? I think when you take advantage of a young person and you construct a relationship like this, it makes it very, very difficult for them to untangle themselves from you fully.
Oh, yeah.
So that you can be punished for the terrible things you've done, and that's what I mean. I mean, she hasn't taken the strong steps to fully separate this because there's so much tangled up in this relationship with her father. And it could be that she's sleeping with her father to keep him from sleeping with her daughter.
And
his own daughter as well.
So first of all, just to respond to something you said.
Yeah.
There is no way to talk about this correctly.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Of course, no speculation.
Well, I don't just mean that. I mean, we're talking about some of the most fucked up shit
yes.
in any movie we've ever talked about, and it is horrible. And there isn't there's no way to delicately explore what the hell this is. It is upsetting and it is awful, and that is what it is. Yeah. But in trying to understand what's going on with these characters, I don't see any other way other than going into it and discussing it. The other thing, and maybe I should say this now, the meaning of the final line of the film, the meaning of the title, Chinatown, is not about Chinatown.
Right.
It is that there are things that you can never actually understand, control, or help. And that anything that you do to try to get into a thing, the odds are you're just going to make it worse.
Well, and I think that's actually, I would push back a little bit and say it does have to do with Chinatown because of the the cops who said...
Oh yeah, it's inspired by that.
That
Absolutely.
it's way too difficult to understand what's going on here, so we do as little as possible.
What I mean is that it's that idea. It totally comes from Chinatown, but it's like to me in a weird way. As I've thought a lot about this movie, and I will say, by the way, the more I've thought about it, the movie's gotten better. And become more and more interesting, which I didn't love it as much. But the phrase "it's Chinatown" now makes me think of the phrase "a catch-22," which comes out, of course, the great Joseph Heller book, right? Which is this idea of, you have to be crazy to get out of the army. Anyone who wants to get out of the army is obviously not crazy, therefore they can't get out of the army. That is a catch-22.
Right.
It's like this, and to me, like, it's Chinatown means that it's so messy and so complicated that there is no way to get into it without causing damage. There's no clean way to win. Much like the water wars, there's no answer.
Right.
And much like us trying to delve into who is Evelyn Mulwray, what is her relationship with her father? Yeah. What is his relationship to her? What is Hollis's relationship to her and the daughter? And we're never going to know. It's Chinatown. It's just, and what we're going to see with Jake is the more he tries to dig in and solve the mystery, the worse he's going to make it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, everything I think would be better.
If he hadn't gotten involved.
Right. But right now, he's going to get even further involved because he realizes her middle initial is C and asks what it's for. And it is for the word cross because that is her father's name.
Yeah.
You must have had a reason to ask me that.
No, I'm just a snoop.
Outside, we're getting our cars. And he says, you should come with me. And she says, no.
Okay, go home. But in case you're interested, your husband was murdered. Somebody has been dumping thousands of tons of water from the city's reservoirs, and we're supposed to be in the middle of a drought. He found out about it, and he was killed. There's a waterlogged drunk in the morgue, involuntary manslaughter if anybody wants to take the trouble, which they don't. It seems like half the city is trying to cover it all up, which is fine by me. But Mrs. Mulwray, I goddamn near lost my nose, and I like it. I like breathing through it. And I still think that you're hiding something.
Mrs. Mulwray, I goddamn almost lost my nose, and I like breathing through it.
Nicholson is he's
great.
He is, when he is on, he is just one of those unique, fascinating people that you just can't stop watching.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And I love, too, that he gets in his car and speeds away, and just as he hits the gas and we hear the screech of his tires, she calls after him.
Yeah.
And wants him to stop.
Mm-hmm.
She wants his help because she's trapped. We
That's
don't know.
the thing.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's difficult to figure out her motivations, Steve, because she's trapped.
Yeah.
She knows she wants to get out of it. She just doesn't know how.
Yeah.
And here comes, for the first time ever, probably in her life, other than Hollis, who was never going to get her out of this, but he was certainly going to be a good sounding board for her. Here comes a guy like Jake who could actually make proactive decisions to untangle this very, very tight knot.
Right. We are back at the water offices. Jake now asked to see the assistant, the John Hillerman character, and the secretary's like, no, he's busy. He's like, okay, I'll wait. She's like, well, he's going to be busy for a long time. I can wait a long time.
Yeah.
And I love like the humming, the whistling, the tapping. And then he starts looking around and he looks at pictures. And there is a picture of John Huston with Mulwray.
Yeah.
And we see the name under it is Noah Cross. And he starts looking around. There are a lot of pictures of Noah Cross here.
Noah Cross worked for the water department.
Yes. No.
Well, did he or didn't he?
He owned it.
I love this writing, by the way. Again, good job, Robert Town.
He owned the water department?
Yes.
You mean he owned the entire water supply for the city?
Yes.
How'd they get it away from him?
Mr. Mulray felt the public should own the water.
Mr. Mulray? I thought you said Cross owned it.
Along with Mr. Mulray.
They were partners?
So here's we talked about on the Cine-Files before. The hardest thing as a screenwriter is exposition, just getting out the information. This is a great exposition scene because it's very clever the way it all comes out.
And it makes sense.
It makes sense. And so if Mulray is somewhat William Mulholland had a partner named Fred Eaton. Fred Eaton, who had been the mayor of Los Angeles, was a major land speculator, and this guy made a ton of money out of water shenanigans. Because and we'll get to kind of what this is. I won't go into it in detail now, but this Fred Eaton guy, he might be a little bit more the model for Noah Cross.
That makes sense.
And then he hears some scraping, and I love they open up the door, and there's the painters taking Mulray's name off the door to put whatever Hillerman's character's names. And then Hillerman will see him. So he goes in.
My goodness, what happened to your nose?
Cut myself shaving.
We got to be more careful. That was really smart.
Only when I breathe.
There's a laugh. He says, "You're still working for Mrs. Mulray?"
I never was.
I don't understand.
Neither do I, actually. You hired me. Or you hired that chippy to hire me.
So now he's determined that Hillerman is the one that hired Ida Sessions.
He's shaking the trees.
Yeah. And he goes, what are you talking about? And he says, let's look at it this way. Mulray didn't want to build a dam, had a reputation that was hard to get around, so you decided to ruin it. Okay. I guess that makes sense.
It does, because he wanted to ruin his reputation so he could take his job. But when Noah found out what Hollis was doing, when Hollis found out what Noah was doing and what obviously this Hillerman guy was a part of, I think he was ready to expose it. And he might have even told Evelyn, and Evelyn might have let it slip to her dad.
Okay, so hold back.
Sure.
So what I think the implication is that Noah Cross hired the John Hillerman character, who's Yalbrand or something. Anyway, it's not actually John Hillerman. He's an actor.
Right.
But they hired that character to hire the chippy, Ida Sessions, to hire Geddes to expose the affair.
Right.
Now, we don't actually know that he was having an affair.
Right. But they knew he was hanging out with this young girl.
Right. But that young girl is Noah Cross's daughter/granddaughter.
Exactly.
Who Noah Cross desperately wants back in his life for reasons of protection.
Sure.
I mean, well, okay, let's just put the most horrible motivations, whatever.
Yeah.
But does he want her exposed on the front page of the paper as having an affair with Hollis Mulray?
He used Evelyn. Why wouldn't he use her? And then also
in this way?
Confused. Yes. What? If he's sleeping with his or raping his daughter, what does it matter to him that the product of the raping, he doesn't see people as human beings. He's one of these sociopaths. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah. Who does not see these people as human beings. And because he's been living so high on the hog as a rich, powerful man, there is no need for him to see them as human beings in his mind.
But he doesn't want publicity.
He doesn't want publicity, no. But if it helps her, and if it helps him to get publicity that Hollis is supposedly having an affair, it's a way to yank Hollis back into the cage. And it's also a way to kind of use this girl if he wants to, or use his daughter, not Evelyn, but the product of the incestuous relationship, Catherine. If he wants to use Catherine in this way, he'll do so.
It doesn't quite ring true to me.
Because you're a decent human being and you wouldn't do it. Noah would.
Well, I'll take your expression of my ignorance in this area as a compliment.
I don't feel that you're ignorant. I feel that you just feel like morally you wouldn't do it.
It's not so much that. It's more that it doesn't jibe perfectly with what I see as Huston's behavior.
How do you
film.
know that he doesn't want her exposed, or what makes you feel that way?
Well, because that he wants to find her.
Right.
Like he has a strong motivation to find her, and when he sees Evelyn at the end, he introduces him as her grandfather.
Right.
But then he says, like, I don't have much time. You have to let me spend time with her. Like I think there is. He's a scumbag. Let me preface this. Of course, he is a horrible, evil, awful person.
Sure.
But I think he has affection also. That one can be a horrible, evil person and through their cognitive dissonance have put.
Of course.
Yeah.
Hitler had a girlfriend.
So I think, him, and again, it goes to part of it is that I think the movie is servicing the needs of the movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not necessarily and they don't want this all to make sense, and I don't think it does.
And let me throw it out there. Do you think Noah Cross couldn't find somebody if he didn't want to find somebody? With the amount of power
that's
and
another
the tentacles
question.
he has.
Well, and why, if he wants to find her, why hire Geddes to expose her as an affair? That's where the motivations...
Oh, no, he was going after Hollis, not her.
Right, but if he knew that she's the person that... Like, if you're going to hire someone
Maybe
to
he didn't know that she was the person.
Oh, he just thinks there is a person, but it's a surprise that person is...
I think that's possible.
Maybe that's possible.
I think so. At that point, then it's like he goes for a different thing.
This is, by the way, turning into the most ridiculous...
I love it, though. It's good. It's like we're watching our own reality show of some kind.
So needless to say, the John Hillerman character is not pleased about this, but he does admit, because obviously Jake knows about the water that's being dumped, thousands of gallons of water in the middle of a drought. And he says, well, we don't want it to get around, but we've been delivering some water to some farmers in the North Valley, and there's going to be a little runoff.
It's like a political thing.
Yeah, now I don't know.
Curry favor and
I
votes.
can't even figure out exactly where this water is going and
no.
why there's runoff that's going way out to the ocean.
Right.
You know, from when it's being delivered to these farms, if that's even true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't even begin to figure out what's going on there. And he's kind of going, well, where is this? And he says, well, it's up in the North Valley. He says, you could be saying Arizona. That is such a huge area.
Yeah, true.
I don't want to nail you. I want to find out who put you up to it. I'll give you a few days to think about it. Call me, I can help. Who knows? Maybe we can put the whole thing off on a few big shots and you can stay the head of the department for the next 20 years.
And that's the end of that scene. He ends up back at his office. Faye Dunaway is there. There's a gorgeous shot of her standing in front of the Venetian blinds. Yeah. By the way, the costumes are beautiful. The set design is beautiful. I don't have all the names of everyone who did this, but it's really great. And I have another story.
Okay.
Of fights on the set.
Sure.
So apparently Polanski, again, very particular about each Venetian blind and was going by hand and adjusting the angle of them to get them just right, going back to camera, looking at it, going back, adjusting them again, adjusting the lights. He wanted the shadows and the light coming through exactly perfectly. And Nicholson is on the set going, we're not going to make our day.
Yeah.
You know, like we're never going to get this shot. We're never going to make it. And, you know, there's also happened to be a Laker game that night. And Nicholson wanted to get the hell out.
Yeah.
And he says, look, I would never tank a shoot for a Laker game. That's what he says.
That's what he says.
I don't know whether that's true, but the reality is he's starting to go like, look, if we're not going to make this day anyway, why can't I just go see my Laker game? And finally, they do like one take, and then finally Polanski says, okay, that's a wrap. And Nicholson goes, that's a wrap. And he swings his hand up and swings his hand down and hits all the Venetian blinds.
Oh.
And Polanski goes crazy.
Yeah.
Follows him into his trailer, grabs a big metal, I don't know if it was a pipe or something, and hits Nicholson's TV.
Wow.
Couldn't break the TV. Picks up the TV, throws it out the window of the trailer. It ends up, it wasn't Nicholson's TV, it was the AD's TV.
Oh, shit.
So then he and Nicholson are screaming at each other, yelling at each other.
Right.
Nicholson storms off the set and then realizes that he had to change wardrobe. So he has to storm back on the set, gets out of his costume, gets in his car. Polanski storms off the set. He gets in his car. They both pull out of the studio, then end up like in a red light next to each other and look over at each other, who, you know, because they're stuck in traffic now, sitting next to her,
right.
And they burst into laughter. They think it's the funniest thing in the world. And then they both realize that the whole crew, and probably Bob Evans and Faye Dunaway and everyone else, are completely freaked out.
Yeah.
Because who knows if they were going to have a movie, because the last thing they saw was the director throwing what he thought was the actor's TV out a window. And they think that is hilarious, and it's a Friday, and they tell no one that they've made up for the whole weekend.
Oh my God.
Just to let them be stressed out.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tell me something. Did you get married before or after Mulray and your father sold the water department? Noah Cross is your father, isn't he?
Yes, of course.
And she opens up her cigarette case to light a cigarette. She already got a cigarette lighting.
Well, it was sometime after. I was just out of grade school when they did that.
So Mulray's quite a bit older than the woman that he marries.
Exactly.
We don't know if he's quite as old as Noah Cross. He's probably younger than that, but he's a lot older.
Yes.
Then he says, does talking about your father upset you? Because she's lit a second cigarette. And she says,
Yes, a little. You see, Hollis and
struggles with the word.
my father had a falling out, finally.
Over you or over the water department?
Not over me. Why should it be over me?
Was it over her?
I don't know.
I mean, we know that when she was 16 years old, she was pregnant with Catherine.
Yeah.
And that she fled to Mexico to have her baby, and that Hollis found her in Mexico and brought her back.
Right.
And we know that the water thing happened when she was in grade school, so long before that. So it seems far more likely that the falling out was over her and the daughter.
Maybe.
But I don't know.
Right. Her saying, why would they do it over me is, not wanting to say the reason, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly seem to be good reasons why they might have done it over her. And what we get, and this is, by the way, true of Mulholland, that Hollis felt the water should belong to the people, and the dad didn't think it that way. And then the dam broke. We don't quite know how long ago that was, and Hollis never forgot Noah Cross for the dam. And then she says...
They never spoke from that time on.
And we, of course, know they did talk again about something like apple cores. Jake doesn't bring it up. They sign their contracts, and now we're heading off to Catalina Island. This is like a great tour of fascinating areas in Los Angeles. And he gets on the Catalina Island, gets into like a Woody station wagon, and heads off, and the music is threatening and powerful. And we see some guys and horses, and there we see John Huston, Noah Cross.
Mr. Gibbs? It is. Oh.
What do you think of the way he's dressed? Did you notice it?
It's out of place.
It's like he's dressed in like an old-fashioned Mexican farm, like the elegant man at the Mexican estate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such an interesting choice to me.
It's the plantation owner almost.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's like he's dressed out of Zorro or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's really weird. John Huston is so great in this movie. He is so odd and so compelling. And what's so interesting is that everybody in the interviews I saw, they all do John Huston impressions.
Of course.
It's like Lorne Michaels. You know that everyone who talks about Lorne Michaels has to do his voice. So I have to tell you about my John Huston impression.
Okay.
So when we did the assistants, I went and trying to meet actors and convince them to do your movie. And we had signed, Stacy Keach had agreed to do the assistants. So I go out and meet him. I'm very nervous, naturally. And I go in, and first of all, the best thing in the world is he pulls out his script, and it is dog-eared and with Post-its everywhere and notes in all the margins. And like as a writer, that is the greatest feeling to have this amazing actor, has actually poured over the script to study it. That felt great. And then we're just chatting about stuff, and he's worked with Orson Welles, and he'd worked with John Huston. And so I asked him, what was it like to work with John Huston? And he said, John Huston only gave really two directions. And the directions were, and he did his John Huston impression. He did a little more, a little less. And I said, oh, that's great. And there was one time on the set where he just had to record the audio for a phone call. And the line was, this is Harlan fucking Keyes, which is his character name in the movie. So we're just recording, it's wild line. So we're not rolling the camera, we're just recording audio. And he does the line, and I walk up to him, I go, a little more. And he went, okay. And he did it a little more. And I come up to him and go, a little more. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. And then he just destroyed it. It was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted.
Gary Green's office.
Give me Gary Green.
Can I ask who's calling?
This is Harlan fucking Keyes.
And it was so great to be able to do the John Huston impression for him. It was just a great moment.
Yeah.
Because that voice and the way his mouth moves and his look is just so, it's John Huston.
Yeah. He's a legend. And watching him work here is just a master at work.
Well, and it's so
Playing
effortless.
with Jake. Yeah.
It's so, there's no acting. There's just like, I'm totally in control and just sitting here having this meal with this whole fish with the head on.
Yeah.
And by the way, almost the whole first half of the scene is all one shot. And they're really eating, which normally in a movie, you don't really eat because you can't eat the same thing, all day. You don't want to swing. You start to feel sick. They're really eating in this scene, and that really is a big fish with the head on it. So I'm sure it's delicious. And first, he talks about, Mr. Gitz.
Gitz.
And Apparently, John Huston did just mispronounce the name, and
Oh,
they
it wasn't
decided
on
to make that a
purpose?
thing. It wasn't on purpose. No,
Oh.
he just didn't know how to say the name, and they said, "No, that's good."
But I'm surprised you're still working for her, unless she's suddenly come up with another husband.
No. She happens to think the last one was murdered.
How'd she get that idea?
I think I gave it to her.
And Houston asks, "What did the police say?" He says, "Accident." And they start asking about the investigating officer, and you talk about Lieutenant Escobar and that he's a good man, and he knew him in Chinatown.
Honest?
As far as it goes. Of course, he has to swim in the same water we all do.
Which I really love. It's like he is honest up to a certain point.
Right.
You know?
Of course, but you've no reason to think he's bungled the case.
None.
Not too bad.
Now, is he just doing this because he killed Hollis and he wants to find out about the detective investigating the case?
Oh no, I think he's just fucking with Jake.
To me, I think he can do both at the same time.
He's playing with him. Look, the thing you said there was an accident is brilliant for his character.
Totally.
Why would he need to know how to pronounce this dude's name? He doesn't. He's nobody to him.
Right.
Mr. Guts.
Yeah.
Mr. Guts. And so it's a great way of it's a great way of just showing superiority without having to show it overtly.
You know what I like about what they're doing with his character is that he is very ostentatious in a very non-ostentatious way.
Yes.
Is that he is, riding horses and dressed like a old style Mexican farmer, but he isn't in tuxedos and fancy cars or anything like that. But he's surrounded by his servants, and he's always used to getting what he wants.
Yeah.
Even
the way he delivers his lines and the joy he seems to be having at like just messing with this guy from the beginning. And Jack thinks he can go toe to toe with him, right? Jack is punching way above his weight in terms of status.
Yeah.
And Noah Cross is just completely in control the whole time.
Well, and it's funny because, as we said, Giddys is kind of a peacock. He's got the outfits. He cares about how he looks. I think Noah Cross reads him in every way right from the beginning, and he's so doesn't care. Doesn't care.
It reminds me a lot of those people in Hawaii. I've been told from a couple people who've grown up or lived in Hawaii, the richest people are the ones wearing flip flops and Hawaiian shirts walking around. They don't have to dress up to show their wealth. They already know they're wealthy.
Well, I mean, I always for me, it's like, why show wealth? Like, because
some people like to do that.
Well, it all depends on what gives you a sense of your own, and if you really care that someone sees you in the Ferrari, then you have to drive around in the Ferrari.
Right.
That seems totally uninteresting to me. To me, it's like, if you really enjoy driving a Ferrari and you have the money to have a Ferrari, then drive a Ferrari.
Yeah.
But why the hell would you care what people that they see you driving the Ferrari?
Welcome to LA, man.
No, I know. That's why I don't quite fit in with this
status.
And he says,
"Are you sleeping with her?" Come, Mr. Gibbs. You don't have to think about that to remember her, do you?
Which is a weird line, because it's like, if you say you have to think about it to remember, you're saying that my daughter is a lousy lay. That is essentially, are you saying my daughter is forgettable in bed? That's in that line.
I guess. I always took it as the fact that you don't say anything immediately tells me all I need to know.
I think it's that too.
If you want an answer to that question, Mr. Cross, I'll put one of my men on the job.
So you can hire me to investigate me.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you.
Mr. Gibbs.
Giddys.
You're dealing with a disturbed woman who's just lost her husband. I don't want her taken advantage of. Sit down.
What for?
You may think you know what you're dealing with, but believe me, you don't.
Talk about the line of the movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the moment.
Yeah.
Right? This is fun. Playtime's over.
Right.
This was fun, but now you're not getting the hint. So let's put this down on the table real quick.
Well, here's the thing I was thinking of. In the classic hard-boiled detective film, and this is a modern version of a hard-boiled detective film, the detective is always kind of bungling around. You know what I mean? Whether it's Maltese Falcon, directed by John Huston. This is the guy who invented this genre of film, really, 1941, and Big Sleep and all those. The detective doesn't really know what's going on. He's just aggressively trying to do stuff. But in the end, he does figure it all out, and he does the right thing. Even The Big Lebowski, which is this exact structure.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of the hardboiled detective bumbling around, eventually does figure it all out and does eventually do the right thing. Mm-hmm. In this movie, that's exactly what is happening, except that it doesn't end that way.
No, because in all those other movies, the villain is never smarter than the detective, even though the detective is bumbling around. The detective is bumbling around, but the detective is always smart. Bogart, even when he stumbles into stuff or happy accidents, always can either talk his way out of it, fight his way out of it, or reason his way out of it. And always the boss. It's Sidney Greenstreet,
right?
You know, in Maltese. In Lebowski, it's the dude. It's Lebowski
It's
in the
Lebowski.
wheelchair. Yeah, in the wheelchair, and he's got that crazy manservant in Philip Seymour Hoffman, or the wacky daughter in Julianne Moore. Here, this is a serious customer. This is a man of power. This isn't a frivolous guy trying to pull off a robbery. This is a guy operating on a whole other level, miles above whatever level we usually see in these noirs.
Well, I think that, first of all, I think that's true. I also think what we see mostly is Jake Gittes doing exactly what you describe of fighting, bullshitting, talking his way out of every situation. He is certainly figuring things out in very smart ways that are really fun, just like all the detectives. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing that I think is different. Okay. There is no solution. See, solving what the Maltese Falcon is really for or what's going on in the Big Sleep, once you solve it, you've solved it. You can't solve this. You can't solve this incestuous relationship in the water wars. Mm-hmm. There's no solving it. Right. And so it doesn't matter whether or not Gittes is good or bad or smart or not smart, because this only can end in tragedy for somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he laughs when he says, you don't have any idea what's going on. He says, why is that funny? And he says, that's what the DA told me in Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
So this connection of you may think you know what you're dealing with, but believe me, you don't. And Chinatown. That is what Chinatown's about.
Yeah.
And Noah Cross says, was the DA right? And Gittes doesn't answer.
Exactly what do you know about me? Sit down.
Mainly that you're rich and too respectable to want your name in the newspapers.
I love this line back.
Of course I'm respectable. I'm old. Politicians, ugly buildings, and whores all get respectable if they last long enough.
That is true. That is a true statement.
True.
And now he offers $10,000, twice what Evelyn is offering, to find the girl.
Yeah.
Why? Well, she's disappeared. It would be useful to find her.
Mulray was murdered. She'd be one of the last to see him alive.
Actually, Noah, you were the last person to see him alive because you killed him. And then this mariachi band enters, which is a very strange moment.
The weirdness of it all.
Really weird. And he asks, when was the last time you saw Mulray? And the shots are great. So we're in a shot with Jack in the foreground, and Noah Cross gets up to go look over the mariachi band that's coming in. Mm-hmm. And then we go to the reverse shot, which is kind of a weird cut because it crosses the line, which means that everybody switched sides, left and right sides. Now we have John Huston in the foreground, his face smiling, and we have Jack Nicholson looking away from camera in the background, asking, when was the last time you saw Mulray? Yeah. And he says, at my age, you forget. And Jack says, we don't see his face.
It was 5 days ago outside the Pig and Whistle, and you had one hell of an argument. I got the pictures in my office, if that'll help you remember.
And John Huston's face falls.
Yeah.
That is a great, great moment.
Well, they've been sparring the whole time.
Yeah.
And Huston has been winning rather easily. And then out of nowhere, Jack comes up with a winner.
He lands a big, big punch.
Yeah. It's the Russians cut. It's that Russians cut moment from Rocky IV. Everything comes back to Rocky IV.
Apparently, you brought it up with On the Waterfront.
I don't know if you know this, but everything comes back to Rocky
All right,
IV.
I guess so. So here are the movies that we decided to do next year. We said we had to do 1776 on the 4th of July.
Yes.
We got to do Patton.
Yes.
We got to do, there's another one I thought. I don't remember.
Okay.
But maybe we have to do Rocky IV.
We have to do Rocky IV. Maybe all 4 of those we do in July to celebrate the independence of this country.
God bless America.
God bless America.
They're all very patriotic.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's it. Okay. So we're doing a month of a famous director in January.
Yeah.
We've discussed that we're going to do a month of Godfather.
Yes, true.
And now we're doing a month of God Bless America.
Yes. Done and done.
I can see it all happening.
And
all
2
right.
of those are 2-parters, absolutely.
You think Rocky IV is a 2-parter?
No. I think Patton and 1776.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know Patton is.
Yeah. 1776 is like 2.5 hours. Or
is it really?
45 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long music.
What was the argument about?
My daughter.
What about her?
Just find the girl.
When he says the fight was about my daughter, which daughter?
Yeah, good question. Good question.
Yeah.
See, this is the point. I think she's disappeared now. See, I don't think he had a problem knowing that Catherine was hanging around with Hollis, because Hollis probably knows who Catherine is. This is a father-daughter thing between Hollis and Catherine. It's not a relationship. It's not an affair. When she disappears, because Evelyn is hiding Catherine, that's a whole nother ballgame. And I think that's why he wants to find her.
Wait, but Evelyn wasn't hiding. So you're saying post-death.
Yes.
That's when we believe Evelyn started hiding Catherine. That's what's involved. Because here's the thing.
That's what I think.
If the daughter that they were fighting over is Catherine, not Evelyn, which is possible, but we don't know.
Yeah.
That happened before Hollis was murdered.
Right.
So Cross got John Hillerman to pay Ida Sessions, Diane Ladd, to hire Geddes to catch Hollis in an affair. And the woman that they catch her with is Catherine. And the day before Geddes gets the pictures of Hollis and Catherine, Cross is having an argument with Hollis about his daughter that might be Catherine.
Might be Catherine.
So this is all very confused to me in terms of why are people doing the things that they're doing.
Maybe Hollis is shielding Catherine, too, from him, which is what the argument's about.
Well, the other question, of course, is Hollis sleeping with Catherine?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think he came with... Look, Evelyn and him didn't have a child.
Right.
I don't think he's ever slept with Evelyn.
This is another key question.
Right. I think that he married her to protect her, to shield her from Noah as much as possible.
And Catherine, we know, has been away because Evelyn hasn't been her mom, but wants to be her mom now.
She's been studying or boarding schools or whatever.
That's something we find out later.
Yes.
And the other thing, and we asked, why do you want to find this girl? And he's like, well, because I can't. It seemed like Hollis cared about her, and I want to take care of Hollis. It's like, well, I didn't really realize you were so fond of Mr. Mulray.
Hollis Mulray made this city, and he made me a fortune. We were a lot closer than Evelyn realized.
That's very interesting. And by the way, water did make Los Angeles, and it did make a lot of people a lot of fortunes.
If you want to hire me, I still have to know what the argument was about.
My daughter's a very jealous woman. I didn't want her to find out about the girl.
Well, that's clearly not true.
Right.
Because he hired Geddes to find out about the girl.
How did you find out?
I still got a few teeth left in my head and a few friends in town.
And he goes, okay, we'll sign another contract. I signed a contract with you for this thing. I'll look into it as soon as I can check out some orange groves.
Orange groves?
We'll be in touch, Mr. Cross.
So now Jake Geddes has been hired by Evelyn to prove that her husband was murdered, and also hired by her father to find the girl that Hollis was apparently having an affair with, according to the pictures, but wasn't having an affair with, according to what we believe, who also is both his daughter and his granddaughter. And also, he is the one who murdered Hollis while he says that he's trying to protect Hollis. And we're also afraid of Evelyn, who is very jealous, but he's implying that she's jealous of this woman that Hollis was having an affair with. That woman is, in fact, not only her daughter, but her sister, and is both the granddaughter and daughter of Noah Cross. It's Chinatown, John.
I don't know. It seems pretty clear.
Well, I think that is as we've clarified everything that is going on in this movie, I think this is a perfect time to end part one of our discussion of Roman Polanski's Robert Towne, Jack Nicholson, Robert Evans film, Chinatown. As always, you can visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for the Cine-Files. You can subscribe to us at all the usual places and leave your comments and leave your reviews. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/thecine-files and even suggest a movie of your own. You can buy or stream Chinatown through cinephiles.net. And if you want to, you can reach me at SR Morris on Twitter, on SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, where can they reach you?
You can always reach me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram. See everything I'm doing there and all the adventures I'm going on.
There are a lot of adventures. You have adventures coming up in a couple of days.
Yeah. As we're recording this, yes, Australia again.
Right.
I'll be in Melbourne.
All right, enjoy Melbourne.
Thank you.
I think that's it for this week. We'll be back for part 2 of Chinatown next week on The Cine-Files.